Here is what I wanted to bring up today. Now, this is by request. So, a little while ago, and I forget who did it, I hope they're on the stream now, but somebody asked that we talk about academia, and in particular, why I chose not to go on in academia and instead entered the Wild West world of show business. So I thought that today would be a good day to do that, because earlier, first of all, usually on Thursday on our last stream of the week, we do, our topic's a little lighter. Sometimes it's just sort of a fun one, or it's kind of like a more broad one. That's typical for a Thursday. And also because earlier this week, we did a story on teachers' salaries throughout the country and how criminally low they are, and how teachers are having to work 2 and 3 jobs, and it's absolutely ridiculous. We talked about that earlier today too, or earlier this week, excuse me, not earlier today. Show just started today. So let's talk about that for today's topic. So first of all, for me, for anyone not in the know, I did my master's degree, and this would have been in 2010. I did a 2-year master's degree. And I did not go on for my PhD. I chose not to. And there's a number of reasons for that. So I'll start with the most obvious reason. So when I was in grad school, what my life was like, I was in a really cool program, and my overall graduate school experience was positive. I learned a lot. I did a lot of interesting research. I learned a lot of ideas that I still use to this day. But that was also when I was doing stand-up. I had started stand-up a little while earlier, and I had been doing it for a few years, stand-up that is. So I was starting to get booked on gigs on the road, and I was starting to make a little money at it. And so it's one of those things. The most obvious answer is, what sounds more fun to you? I mean, doing stand-up is one of my favorite things in the world. So what sounds like a more ideal Friday night? Being on stage, doing one of your favorite things in the world, or sitting in a classroom listening to some faculty member pontificate about a paper they wrote that nobody will ever read? To me, the former sounded like more fun. So when it came time for graduation, I kind of decided, you know what, I'm going to take a chance on a dream. I'm going to try to be a full-time stand-up. And it actually really helped me, because the cool thing about being in graduate school, you know when the finish line is. If you're just working a job, you got to just sort of decide that you're going to quit. But I knew that I was going to graduate in May. So I said, okay, come May, I need to figure out what I'm going to do next. And I don't want to go on in school. I made the decision I don't want to go on for my PhD. So when I made that decision, I thought, man, maybe I should try to be a comedian. And it was the start of my last semester, so I had plenty of time to try to figure shit out. So I worked really hard trying to book May. I was like, okay, I graduate on May 5th. I think that was the date, actually. I think it was May 5th. It might have been like the 6th or 7th. It's not important. But I was like, I'm going to try to book my entire May. I'm going to try to get as many gigs as I can so that I can make a living as a stand-up comedian for at least 1 month. At least 1 month. And that was 6 years and counting ago. Or, yeah, over 6 years ago now. So that was a big part of it. I just decided that I really wanted to take a shot. I decided that, you know, it's better to do it when you're younger versus older. You know, I kind of thought, gee, nobody in the academic world is going to care what I look like on TV. But people in show business do. So, you know, now's the time to do this. You know, if I'm older and I decide I want to go back, you know, presumably the academy will still be standing. I guess you never know, but presumably it'll still be standing. So that was a big part of my decision. And then the other thing, and this is something that we've talked about some on the show, there have been moments in my academic career where I kind of thought this place is just a corporation with textbooks. And the whole notion of the radical academic, I think is pretty much dying out. I don't think it was ever a big thing, but I feel like it used to be more of a thing in the 60s, and then has been on the decline ever since, at least based on a lot of the writings that are out there. I can think of a handful of radical academics that are still out there. I think a lot of people, they just kind of say what they need to say to get tenure. They say what they need to say to please their faculty head. And I did see a lot of that in my graduate school program. And Occupy Wall Street was a big thing for me. And the reason it was a big thing for me is because I felt like I was on the wrong side of the fence. I was in graduate school during Occupy Wall Street, and, was the movement perfect? Certainly not. No movement is. All movements have their imperfections. That is a truth in the world. But their message, by and large, I thought was a good one, was a powerful one. And when I was in school, I first of all, I didn't really participate much because I was in school and I was doing other things. And we would talk about it in class. And so many people were just so dismissive of it. And one person, they tried to be subversive by saying it was corporate. Like, they were like, yeah, it's actually corporate. It's all fake and blah, blah, blah. And then they talked about how these people were acting out of line. And I remember at one point in one of my classes, I was just like, the cops pepper sprayed an 80-year-old woman. An 80-year-old woman. They pepper sprayed her. They pepper sprayed an 80-year-old woman. These people were acting out of line. There was footage, and I went to graduate school in Pittsburgh. There was footage in Pittsburgh of these cops just shoving people for no reason. This girl was just walking, and they just shoved her. A girl. And everyone looked at me like I was an alien. Like, they just looked at me like, wow, what are you getting upset about? Police brutality? We just pretend that's not a thing. And I really felt like I was on the wrong side of the tracks. I really felt like, man, I don't want, I'm like, someday from now, if my grandkids are like, hey, what did you do during Occupy? And I would have to say, I was sitting in a classroom criticizing it. And that's a big problem that I do have with academia. It's sometimes, and not all the time, but sometimes, and in my experience, too often, you have people sitting in an ivory tower trying to understand a subculture or another culture. And in many ways, it is condescending. In some ways, one can make the argument it's racist at times, and it can be very off-putting, and it can make you kind of look around and be like, what the fuck am I actually doing? So that's why I chose stand-up in the short term, and that's, again, I'm talking about my experience, and again, my experience overall was still a positive one. I'm glad I went to grad school. I enjoyed it a lot, but I decided it's not for me, at least not right now. Maybe 20 years from now, I'll get tired of whatever it is you call this, and I'll decide I want to go back, and I can if I want to. So, those are my thoughts, and let me see what you guys are saying. Maybe I know some of you guys have experience with academia as well, so let me see what you guys are saying. Oh, some of you guys are asking me where I went. I went to Duquesne University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Some of you guys are saying you agree with me. How did you get together with Jimmy, Steph, and Arno? Well, that has nothing to do with what I was talking about. No, I'm just kidding. I knew Jimmy from TYT Network. We both, even when I was a road comic, I was on the Young Turks Network. They would promote my videos and stuff. So whenever I would visit LA, I would go into the studio and do whatever shows they would let me do. And in 2013, I did The Point, which is a show that I believe that show's no longer in existence. But I did The Point, and Jimmy Dore was also on the panel. So, and I knew who Jimmy was. I mean, I watched Jimmy. In fact, we still talk about this story because he'll ask me about it every now and again. But I watched Jimmy's special in my college dormitory when I was a freshman, because his first special came out in 2004. It was very critical of the Bush administration. I really hated Bush. So I watched Jimmy's special, and I remember liking it. And I have yet to track down which one of my college buddies I watched that frickin' special with. Because I know I watched that special with one of my college buddies, And I've asked, I'm like, who did I watch that special with? And no one's been able to. They're like, nah, I don't think it was me. But I mean, this is going back a little while. So yeah. So that's how I knew Jimmy. And then when I moved on to when I moved over here to LA, I kept in touch with Jimmy, and he gave me an opportunity to do panel, and I showed up, and I kept showing up, and then eventually he wanted me to start writing for him, so I did, and then it morphed into what it is now. And then there's a few other channels and players involved here, but that's the long and short of it. And I guess to tie it back into today's topic, had I gone on for my PhD, none of it would have happened. Doug has something to say. When I was going for my doctorate, I had a boss who told me, will it get you a raise? No, it's just for your self-gratification. Technically, he was right, but one day when I retire. Yeah, I think that, and I will say this, I think that a lot of people that think that the academy, and when I say the academy, I know that's just a broad way of saying like academia as a whole. I think when people think it's just there for job training, that's kind of the wrong attitude. But I think that our economic situation forces people to take that attitude. I think the point of higher education is to expand your mind, to learn new skills, and to get a different grasp on the world that's going to help you in whatever your career may be. However, because, at least here in the United States, we have a situation where people typically go into crippling amounts of debt to pursue higher education, it's hard to take that attitude. That's the way it ought to be, but that's not the way it is. And it's not the people's fault that that's the case. It's not the person's fault, like, oh, you have the wrong attitude. Like, no, you have the attitude you have to have because of this shitty situation, because of predatory loans, because education's not affordable, and it's becoming something for the elite, which is dangerous. That's dangerous. And we live in a very weird time because higher education is slowly becoming something reserved only for the elite, which is dangerous. However, we have knowledge in our pockets now. We have a super highway of knowledge just in our pockets on our phones. So knowledge is arguably more accessible than ever before. Education, not so much. It's a weird, very weird contemporary landscape we are living in right now. And the solution for it is free college. Those are my thoughts.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your